Cool. Let's kick it off. Welcome everyone to Sprint Demos, Sprint 35, Fleet version 4.63.0, codenamed Bromine. Someone suggested we start combining element names using multiple in a sprint and suggested sodium, bromine, and oxygen as a sprint. I was like, nah, bro, that's not a good idea. It's a lot easier if it's pronounced bromine. Better puns for that. Like, what do you call a frat house in a quarry? Uh, but unfortunately, it's not pronounced that way. All right, so agenda. Let's kick it off. We demo features from each product group, then list improvements and bug fixes. We always read the user story aloud before showing the demo and explain why it's important to our customers. What problem does it solve for them? We always show where the documentation for the feature lives during the demo. And we include a list of bug fixes and improvements, but we only demo if there's an important change. And this is going to be the first sprint demo with our new product groups, MDM orchestration and software. We're going to go in alphabetical order, make it easy. So we'll kick off with the MDM product group features, and I'll hand it off to George.
All righty. For this sprint, both with PTO from the holidays and focus on the new upcoming unified queue, we have just one thing to demo, and Victor will start us off.
All right. Thank you, George. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And the story is to speed up Bootstrap package delivery with CloudFront. So as an IT admin, I want my hosts to download the Bootstrap package and software installers from the closest CloudFront region so that new employees can get started as fast as possible. So this solves the problem where the employees are located in Asia or somewhere far from the Fleet server, and so they can get their Bootstrap packages and software installers faster. As a note, we kind of split the QA for the story into two parts. The Bootstrap packages are going to get QA'd right away, and the software installers are going to get QA'd with Orbit 1.39.0, which will come out after this release. Okay, so first I want to give some background on kind of what we're doing and the problem we're trying to solve here. So we have most customers are using S3 buckets. And then we have our Fleet server, and then we have our host over here. So what's happening right now is the host is asking our Fleet server for a Bootstrap package, a software installer, and the Fleet server is going to S3 to get it. And this could be a slow process. So with when you enable CDN, right? CDN caches this in the cloud all over the world, and then puts copies of that data in all these locations. So then the host will directly go to the closest location and get the data. So this is a much faster download experience, and as a side benefit, it reduces load on our Fleet server. And in my opinion, this should be kind of the recommended way that we serve up software installers and Bootstrap package. Here's another picture, just from geography perspective from Amazon, how CDN works. Everyone just gets their data from their local copy, and there's a lot of CDN locations around the world. Basically, I'm going to show the docs. I'm not going to kind of demo it because you actually don't see anything, because the server basically replaces the MDM URL with a CDN URL, and I'm going to show the CDN URL shortly, but I kind of will go through how to set this up. So we added server configs. these 3 server configs that all have to be set. The URL, which looks like this, and then we're also requiring the use of signed URLs that require a public key and a private key, so that way only a signed URL can download a package, a Bootstrap package or a software installer. So this is a recommended security precaution. So we're not allowing just using publicly available CloudFront URLs. And then here I'm going to show you how the URL, how the signed URL looks like. In this API example, this is kind of what Orbit's going to see as when it asks for software install details. It will now get this installer URL content that it can use to download, and the Orbit is going to try to download this URL. If it's not able to, it'll just fall back to the previous endpoint, downloading directly from Fleet. As you can see in this URL, we have expiration date here, and then we have this long signature, which is basically the policy for downloading. And then we have this public key that we saw in the previous doc. And then lastly, we have this guide. We kind of explained that we point to configuration options, mention them here. The URL is good for 6 hours. If the server hits an error, it'll fall back to the previous way, directly to Fleet server. And then I already mentioned if the agent hits an error when downloading, it'll fall back to the previous. Now, one challenge here is that it may be a little bit hard to test whether the CDN is working. One way to test it is to actually do the enroll a new Mac OS and make sure the Bootstrap package is downloaded correctly. You can also look at logs. And as a future improvement, what we might want to do is we might want to, in setup experience, allow people to download this Bootstrap package from the CDN. So currently it is downloaded through Fleet, but it'd be nice if we were able to download this via CDN. Just for testing purposes. All right, that's all I had. Any questions?
Looks like there's some questions in the chat, Victor.
A lot of bromide stuff.
Does Orbit use Amazon's SDK, and do they have public keys pinned?
Orbit does not. Orbit receives the URL. So in order to generate this signed URL, this is just generated locally using the private key, right? So the server does not need to go out anywhere to generate this signature. It generates it locally.
Oh, what about you, Brock?
I was just wondering if we could add a test button there so that you didn't have to do an actual enrollment to see if the thing was working. Just some tiny package.
Yes, I do recommend this as a follow-on story. In fact, it would be even better if you could able to in config switch between CDN and non-CDN and be able to try both of them.
Yeah, cool.
Cool. Can we capture that in the design thread for the demo?
Alrighty, that concludes the MDN features this week.
Great, thank you. And over to the new orchestration or updated orchestration product group and Sharon.
Okay, thank you, Luke. We'll start with a nice feature that Jacob developed, which persists user preferences on the DB, allowing them to use this everywhere. Jacob, take it.
Everybody. So this was a feature to solve a bug, well, purported bug, where a customer of ours wanted to be able to persist their the preferences that they had set for which columns were displayed here on the host page through various browser sessions, so logging in on a different browser, incognito mode, etc. And our previous implementation relied on local storage for that, which obviously doesn't persist across different browsers, etc. So basically what we have here is we're logged in as a user that is on the previous version of the system. So if we go ahead and hide a few columns, well, I guess we're showing columns. So let's uncheck a few of these. And if we check our local storage, we'll see that the hidden columns are in this array here. And that's how we're keeping track of it. So, and then, yeah, do the next step here. We get up to the latest, make sure we've got our front end build. Looks good. And we do a hard refresh. We will see this basically, if you notice in the console here, we do basically a UI migration of sorts. So the new code found the user's existing preferences in local storage and sent a call to the server to add those to the new user preferences, user settings database column. So this is our user here, user prefs on the bottom. And if we refresh, we'll see. We should see those same preferences persisted here. Well, it's not there, but let's see if we got it in the UI.
Did you have to restart the server, Jacob?
Shouldn't, no. Yeah, so it is in the server. There's something not quite catching up with that database viewer there, but we do have those same hidden columns now coming back from the API. And now the UI is using that as its source of truth for those preferences, and we can see that the same columns are visible. So this should cause no friction for users who currently have column preferences set, getting to this new system, and all users' preferences will now be persisted to whatever browser session they find themselves in. And this infrastructure also lays the groundwork for any kind of user preferences work we might want to do going forward. So never show me this warning modal, dark mode, anything like that. We'll be able to save each user's preferences. That's it.
And maybe even export import settings across users in the future.
Sure.
Yeah, nice, thank you. So typically we don't show engineering initiated, but the next one is clearly with the customer value. So Dante will show a quick presentation of how we improve the CI cycle, allowing us quicker development cycles. Please take it, Dante.
For sure. Hey, 1 second, let me share my screen. So this is a quick presentation on splitting up the CI and how we are able to improve development cycle speeds. So this was the state of testing before. The CI could take about 15 minutes to run all the tests. Integration tests take forever, and on top of that, they would always run all the way through, even if there were failures, meaning that integration test failures would cause a huge holdup. The push to CI failure to fix cycle was way too long, because if you can imagine, there's a typo, you push the CI test fix, It runs again, 15 minutes. There's another failure. Fix it, push it again, another failure. We can do better than that. So this came in 2 rounds. The first round was splitting up the core integration test into subtests. As you can see here, the tallest bar here, the core integration test, I split it up initially into 4 subtests. We have the vulnerability one, the Fleetctl one, the MySQL one, and then the core, which is where the remainder of the service tests go. This was a pretty big speed up already. As you can see, we came down from about 15 minutes to almost 10. The second round was splitting up the integration tests. So we then go from 1 tall integration test into 3 sub-integration tests. We have core, enterprise, and MDM. The outcome of this was that the integration test as a whole ran 30% faster in most cases, and the integration test, which was the one that would be most likely to fail, got cut in half. The benefit of this is that since the integration tests run all the way through, but now they're split up into 3 groups, if one of them fails, it cancels everything else and lets the developer know right away. The key results for this were faster CI failures, which means the CI failure to fix, to push cycle has been a lot faster. I also split up in a way that there's a framework to continue splitting up tests if we need to. And the most important part, less waiting time means more value delivered to customers every day. That's it.
Okay,
Just thought I'd share
thank you.
that.
And that's it for us. Look.
Great, thank you, Jacob and Dante. That's awesome. And every sprint, there's a lot of work that goes on under the hood in engineering. Some of it just a bit too engineering minded to cover here. Some of it confidential customer issues. But I just want to take a second to recognize all of the hard work that the engineers are putting in that. Lucas has been driving a big effort recently on a lot of different fronts. So just want to thank him and appreciate his efforts there. Handing it over to the new software product group and Tim Lee.
Hey everybody, let's see. Before our intro, I just want to say CI improvements make me so happy. Moving on, we have a single story for adding policy automation for installing VPP apps. So we have this for custom packages and as well as fleet maintained apps. So we're expanding that into natural expansion into VPP apps. And I believe Ian, I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Cool. So as an IT admin, I want to install App Store apps automatically when a macOS host fails a policy, so that I can deploy App Store apps to many hosts without having to use third-party automation tool, for example, Tines. With that, I'm going to swap my sharing over to roll the tape on a video, and use this one. In Fleetctl 63, we're adding support for installing VPP apps as part of policy automations. This adds to the existing functionality of installing custom packages in Fleet maintained apps, as well as running scripts. For this demo, we'll be trying to install Trello on this host. Note that VPP automations are macOS only, while we do support iOS and iPadOS for VPP app installs. The policy infrastructure requires queries, and those are macOS, Windows, or Linux. So let's hop over here and add Trello as a VPP app. Go over here, add the automation. By the way, one improvement that we have here is if your policy only targets a single or 2 of the 3 platforms, then we're not going to show you software titles that are incompatible with that. So you're only going to see macOS titles in this case because I filter the policy to macOS. Save that. And let's see if my host has stayed online here. While this is refreshing, there are a few caveats to this edition of this feature. If the host is not enrolled in MDM, or if there are not enough VPP licenses to install successfully on the host, then the install will fail to queue and you won't get something in the activity feed about that. You will get something in server logs, but in a future release, we will be a bit more loud about those failures. If those particular failures happen, the resolution is get the host enrolled in MDM, get sufficient number of VPP licenses for the app, then remove the automation and add it back. That will reset status of that particular policy, and incoming policy failures will cause the automation to run again. Additionally, the apps are currently installed as unmanaged, and we don't have the ability to remove VPP apps via Fleet quite yet. So at this point, we have an install here. And let's actually see that on the device. And there's Trello. Now, as with the other automations that we have, if you try to delete an app out from under an automation, then we won't let you. So if we go here, we hit the delete button, that's not going to work. In order to get that to work, we would need to remove the automation here, hit the save button, go back to software, and now we can remove. Bulk removals of VPP apps, for example, by changing VPP token team association, will clear out policy automations when they clear out the VPP apps. Speaking of bulk actions, this is available on GitOps. If you specify under the install software key on a policy an App Store ID instead of a reference to a software package, then we will use VPP to handle that. Thank you to Rachel Perkins for doing the UI front-end stuff for this feature. And docs for this will have updates in both the Install VPP Apps article here, as well as the automatically install software guide here. All right, and now I will check chat for questions.
Don't think we have any on this feature, unless anyone has any now. Thank you, Ian and Software Product Group. That wraps up the features, but we have a lot of great improvements and bug fixes going out with this release. So for those, I'm going to hand off to MDM and George Carr.
All righty, let me go ahead and share my screen. Once again, the focus for most of the team has been on the upcoming unified queue, so just a little bit to talk about here. Sarah did some UI improvements, so removed the arrows from the solutions in the MDM table on the bottom of the dashboard page. So this has been resolved. And also the My Device page should hide available for install filter. That's because, of course, available for install is more explicitly going to be using the self-service method on the My Device page. So that's been removed as well. And then Victor will be spotlighting his bug fixes.
Thanks, George. So first I want to mention I was looking at a few MDM bugs this sprint, and several of them were hard to reproduce, and by that I mean I was not able to reproduce them. You know, even a customer issue that I thought I understand, I had trouble reproducing. And also, if you're Fleetctl, that you see something that happens to your computer, and you file an issue, it seems like even those can be hard to reproduce if the machine is still not in a broken state in dog food where I can have access to it. And there's a couple of reasons why that might happen. It may be that there's another issue that's actually the root cause, and what you're seeing now is just a manifestation of that other issue. For example, your MDM certificate may be expired and you're seeing something not work, but the root cause is actually farther deeper down. So I just want to recommend to try to reproduce issues locally when you're filing bugs. All right, moving on to the actual fixes. In 461, as part of an effort to improve MDM load, we introduced an issue where MDM commands could be being sent twice, which is a problem for many MDM commands. So this was fixed in 462.1. So I just want to mention that, you know, try to get customers over to 462.1 and not use 461 or 462 if they're using Apple MDM. Next issue is we had an incorrect DDM activity feed that was also introduced in the last release by the secrets feature. It's a mild bug. Basically, when you're using GitOps, you would always see that DDM declarations have been updated because we were always updating the updated at column. So this has been fixed. So you should not see, you know, extra activity feed items when you're uploading the same declaration with GitOps. And then this last issue, oftentimes when we're using the UI, for example, we go over here to this Bootstrap package page, and let me reload this. And there's a 404 right here error because the front-end client is asking for the package, but the package doesn't exist. So this shows up as a server error, and that makes it that makes the server logs kind of noisy and difficult to debug. And this is just one instance here, so we should definitely be paying attention to our server logs and dog food and cleaning them up when we're seeing client errors as opposed to server errors. So that cleaned up that error by downgrading that to a debug message. And then on engineering and related front, I've been looking at some flaky tests for MDM integrations. I believe there's some additional improvements that can be done, but I think they're much better right now. All right, back to you, George.
All right, that concludes MDM bug fixes. Over to you, Luke.
Thank you. And over to orchestration and Sharon for their improvements and bug fixes.
Thank you. We'll start with Jacob with a list of bugs. Thank you, Jacob.
Okay, so I'll just walk us through these tickets real quick to give an overview. So this bug was related to the API was not presenting configuration information for MFA and SSO to team maintainers, though team maintainers' capabilities in the UI were dependent on whether or not these are configured. So we basically opened up some data from the API for team level maintainers to enable the UI to know what they can and can't do in this state, in this situation. Here, the self-service tab is sometimes present, sometimes not on the My Device page, and this required just updating basically how we deal with what we're pushing to the URL to be dynamic, just like how the presence of the self-service tab is dynamic. This was updating our enable SSO, or edit SSO settings form with our latest and greatest validation pattern, basically preventing the user from submitting the form unless required fields are present, and also giving them the cleanest UX possible, trying not to be annoying, but also not letting them do things when a required field is not present. Adding our good old -- here when a host doesn't have a UUID, which I think is the case for iPhones, iPads, and ABM ordered machines that haven't been set up yet. Here we we replaced the logo we use in all of our automatically generated emails to be more friendly with dark mode. Now this is the buggy state, so it looks not great. The fix is in the attached PR here, which if you're curious, you can go find that, but I'm not going to take the time here. But we basically added a white outline to the logo. This modal, where on the host details page, when you're trying to run a query ad hoc on that host, we were not presenting, for a host on a team, we were not presenting the team level queries in this modal. We were only presenting the inherited global queries, so we wanted to include both team and inherited queries in this case. A little bit of a copy update in this flash message to make it easier to read. Bringing together, basically summarizing what yes and no mean in a new tooltip in the last updated text instead of over yes and no individually. And this, yes, when the user was running a query that was set to run never, such a query, when the user is running a query like that as a live query, the results of the query were not being counted in that query's performance impacts column here. And that was to do with a small logical tweak somewhere in the complex live query run flow. So now running an existing query as a live query, even if it's not set to run on a schedule, will contribute to the calculation of its performance impact.
And I just want to say real quick on that one. Number one, thanks for doing that. Number two, the reason that's a big deal is because they want to have a query that they're intentionally not running on every computer. And they also want to be able to test its performance before they expand it to multiple computers. So that's a very, very useful change.
Nice. And finally, we're doing some fancy combination of when adding or editing a user, we're including errors both having to do with form validation of the user's interactions as they're interacting, and returned errors based on, for example, the email that the user submitted being a duplicate of one that already exists in the DB. So server errors like that, as well as interaction errors, we are displaying both. We're displaying both of those as field errors on the form fields, and that there was some bugginess with that since it's a little bit irregular. So figured that out. Okay, that's it. Thanks for the added context, Brock. And back to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Jacob. And next we have Dante with a list of bugs as well.
Sorry, I was muted. All right, so I got a couple of bugs here this cycle. The first one was that webhooks were not working correctly using GitOps. Users would have their webhooks URL disabled in their GitOps file, and when they would push it, their webhooks would still be enabled inside of Fleet. This fix just makes sure that if webhooks are not enabled or defined in the GitOps file, they do not remain enabled inside of Fleet. Second one was when a user is defining settings inside of their agent options in the Fleet UI, it'll just tell you if something's wrong that, oh, hey, this isn't where it should be, or it doesn't tell you where it should be. Hold on. I forgot to open this PR. There you go, because I have a picture where now it'll actually show you where the key that you're putting in the wrong location should be under. So if you, for example, have this, distributed TLS max attempts key under the decorators, it'll say, actually, this should be under config.options. The third one is just a minor text correction. Users would be instructed to always double-click to install Fleet. All we did here was when a user is generating a package, it'll actually tell them what the actual proper thing to do is on their platform. So for example, if you're generating a PKG, it'll tell you how to run the command line to install it. If you're running creating a Debian file, it'll tell you how to install it using apt. Same with DNF and same with Windows as well. And the last one was there was an issue with Fleet, not with Fleetd, but with OS query. There was a system drive environment variable that, if not defined, could lead to a possible vulnerability. So we now define that if that's available in the environment where Orbit is running. That's it for my bugs this cycle.
Thank you, Dante. And last for the improvements, we have Scott. Scott, take it.
All right. I will share my screen here if I can find the right one. This looks right. Okay. So a few things that happened during the sprint. A lot of these were bugs that turned out to be more documentation issues than bugs after I tracked them down. So this first one here, unable to set script execution timeout, agent option was a good example of that. Folks were having trouble in the UI setting the script execution timeout option. I don't know if I can, if the thing will show the, yeah, so people were, the issue is that folks were trying to set the option inside of this options key here, which seems reasonable based on the way this UI is laid out, but actually in order to get this to work, the option has to be set right under config as a peer to options. So updated the documentation to reflect that. So hopefully people won't get bitten by that in the future. Address leftover to-dos for remote Yara rules feature. So this is a feature that was implemented previously to be able to deploy Yara malware scanning rules remotely. This is a kind of a unique feature of Fleet where you can deploy the rules to Fleet and have them stored in the Fleet database and have them kind of secure instead of being publicly available. So there's a couple of documentation items that were due to be fixed up for that, which I added, and also added the ability to load test this, since this feature, has a request to Fleet involved in it, for the hosts to get the rules to scan their files. We wanted to be able to load test that, so I updated OS query perf to allow you to simulate this on a host by selecting, doing a query for a Yara rule, and it will make a request to Fleet, verify that it at least got some response, and then continue on. So it kind of simulates the load that feature puts on the system. Updating software to multiple teams via, okay, so on the MSP dashboard, the client we have currently using this was having an issue where when they tried to upload software to more than one or two teams at once, which is kind of the whole point of the MSP dashboard, it was timing out. And we managed to find out that this was just an issue with the way that we were using Axios to upload this software, to make these requests. And once we changed some configuration, we were able to get it to work properly so that it doesn't completely time out every time we do it. Right again. Oh, so Salsa attestations, hopefully as of 4.63 release, should be completely working for both binaries and images. This is a way for our customers to kind of have more proof that the software that's getting downloaded, both directly and via Orbit, is built by us. They can verify the process by which it was built. So wrote a guide for that. Just a quick guide to what software attestation is, link to the attestation we use, which is called Salsa, and some just a quick documentation on how you can also use the GitHub verifier tool to verify that the software is attested and what the provenance is. Let's see. Alert someone when there are cron failures in managed cloud. This we finally got this pushed out, so I can kind of demonstrate this. Let me stop sharing here and share my desktop real quick. The most dangerous of things, sharing your whole desktop, but we're going to do it. So if we go to the P2, we can see this is an example of one that I triggered this this error on the cron monitor by putting errors in one of the cron stats rows. But from now on, whenever one of the jobs that is scheduled via what we call cron are scheduled jobs, if they have a failure, we now get a P2 alert, and it will tell you. This will typically be, this key will be the actual name of the kind of sub job that failed, because each one of them, the vulnerability scan, for example, can have a lot of different jobs in it that could fail, and it will give you then a list of the errors that failed. This one, obviously, I just stuck in there for testing, but this will show up from now on. So dog food doesn't actually tend to have a lot of these, but we do have some customers on Managed Cloud that have some jobs that fail from time to time, and they wouldn't know that they're necessarily failing. So we'll at least get an alert now where they can set up alerts to send them wherever they like.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks, Scott. And Luke, this is the improvements and bugs part.
Great. Thank you, Orchestration Product Group. And over to Tim Lee and the Software Product Group for their improvements and bug fixes.
Hey, everybody. We're going to start off with Rachel Perkins.
Everybody, happy Friday, end of sprint. So I'm just going to go over a bunch of UI bug fixes. The first group I'm focusing on are more like unexpected bug fixes, and then I'll go over more styling stuff. So this first one is something that has been coming up for months. And basically what happens is when we are looking at host counts, is this the correct one? Yes. When we're looking at host counts, oftentimes our users and even our engineers and internal people are wondering why our host counts differ. So what we did was we added tooltips onto those host counts, explaining that this is the last time that it was updated for that page, because we have different pages updating at different times. Like for example, software runs every hour. And so it tells the user that they can go to view all hosts, and that would be the most up-to-date count. This next one here is we have a page that 404 is, meaning that the Fleet maintained app does not exist, but we've been giving it something's gone wrong. So a user might think that we did something wrong on our end, but in actuality, there is no page that exists. So that's now fixed. Here we moved a little too quickly, and I think we didn't add the links into two of our links in our UI. And so they were just empty and just sent it back to the same page. And so those are both now fixed. Here, another quick bug was when you were clicking on specific Fleet maintained apps, it was linking to the row ID instead of the actual app ID. So it was sending you to a page that was for the row ID, which does not match the app ID. And so that is now fixed as well. And then this last more unexpected bug fix is when you currently have teams set for VPP and you go to remove a team from VPP, the user doesn't really understand what that means. So we added a little tooltip explaining what that means to remove a team from VPP, that you're not actually removing the software, you're just removing the access to add the software to that team. And so those are the unexpected bug fixes. All these other ones are more look and feel, and design and front end has been working around the clock, basically trying to make sure that all of our look and feel is very consistent. So this first one was a lot of drop down with styling issues. You can see that this drop down goes too far. There's a drop down that was missing an icon. So there was about 5 or 6 different issues with drop downs that are now fixed. Software page heading issues. You can see that this header runs into this thing right here. So we had to update how this was rendering using responsive design. So that's now cleaned up. Here, when you get a 404, we have this button randomly all the way here on the left. It should be next to the Get Help on Slack. So that is now fixed. Here we have a WhatsApp icon, and it was kind of rendering funky based on the SVG. So I had to finagle some code in there to make it look not cut off all funky. Here we have our software names can be any file name, and the user can have like a zillion characters as a file name. And so it was running off the page on many modals. So you can see that here, and there was one in an activity feed modal. So if you see any of this, please let me know. We should have fixed all of them, but who knows? What else? This one was a recent bug push where if you used a drop down, the selected option was turning white when it shouldn't be there. This one was just a quick help text change, changing the styling to match other help texts since radio buttons are new to help text. This one now has consistency on where the Teams dropdown is. There was just some extra padding that was being added to some pages. And that's it. So that's everything for my fixes.
Awesome. Lots of great stuff there. Haziel, you're up next. Mute buttons are hard.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Here, I'm just going to turn my headphones off. Sorry, I'm having some audio issues. Okay. Yeah, so I got a few bugs here. This first one was a false negative that was coming up for iTerm 2. So when Fleet would get it pulled in, it wouldn't report any vulnerabilities, even though there definitely are some for various versions of it. And this was just an issue with how the CPE was being calculated. So we added a CPE translation, and that fixed the problem. So the vulnerabilities are showing up with the correct versions now. The next one is, well, oh shoot, I think I linked the PR here, not the ticket. But this was something that we noticed while doing some different work related to software installers and fleet maintained apps. Basically, if the installation or if the installer download on the Fleetd side would fail for whatever reason, the reason we caught it was because we're trying to download a really big installer, and the operation would time out at the ngrok layer, so that would send an error back to Fleetd for the downloading process for the installer. So if that failed, the process, like basically we wouldn't clean up the temporary directory that we create in order to like house all of the installation files. There is a thing there's code in there basically to do the cleanup. It just wasn't getting triggered early enough. And so if you would error out during the installer download, the cleanup would never happen. And then the next time you would just create this new directory and it would kind of happen forever. So this was a pretty small fix to just move that clean up code higher up in that function. And so now it happens all the time and cleans up as expected. So the next one is this problem with pulling the correct name out of .pkg files that are uploaded to Fleet. So this was kind of interesting, getting to learn a bit about the sort of how .pkgs are put together. And basically there's inside of a .pkg, there's lots of different files, but one of them is supposed to have the data for sort of like the distribution. So telling you some metadata about the package that you're installing. And part of that is the name. And so, but the problem is that that file could have something that's completely unrelated. It can just kind of have anything in it, right? So in this case, Sentinel-1, its distribution file has this string distribution package in the title section. And so that's just what we were going off of. Like that's what our code would pull out and read. And so the title or the name in Fleet would show up as distribution package, which doesn't look good. So after some finagling, we were able to improve the algorithm we use to figure out what name to pull out of that file. And there's still we wound up needing to add some sort of like a list of known PKGs that might have an issue, that might have like just sort of nonsense in there or just not the right name. So we can sort of more intelligently figure out, hey, like we know Sentinel-1 is one of these that might have a problem, so we can pull the correct name from somewhere else. And then lastly, there is this issue with reinstalling Fleet maintained apps. So like after it's already installed, issuing another install on top of that. The goal is for that to be, work without any issues, but for some Fleet maintained apps, that would result in an error. So the fix that we found was to basically update the installation scripts that are used for those apps to just handle the fact that we're installing over an existing install a little bit better. And so, yeah, the list of apps is in the ticket. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome, thank you very much. And last up, we have Ian.
All right. Let me do a quick screen share here of the correct. Cool. All right. So 2 quick bugs. First off, we forgot to exempt the Bootstrap package upload endpoint from our timeouts. So if you don't have a super fast internet connection, you have a larger Bootstrap package to upload. Since we do have a limit of 500 meg on that, the server would time out after 25 seconds, and that would be a problem with larger packages. So this, I believe, will get patched not only for 4.6.3, but I think we'll be rolling out its own patch in 4.62 for this. And then the other there's a false positive for an Okta verify. This CVE is only applicable to iOS hosts. And since we don't do vulnerability scanning on iOS at this time, the solution was to just ignore this particular CVE because it's actually kind of hard to tell these apart by platform. And that's all I got.
Awesome. That wraps it up for the software team outside of our OS query contributions.
Cool. Thank you. So yeah, we have some OS query updates. I'll just hand these off. First one over to Konstantin.
Sure. I've been working on fixing the Python packages detection for the past couple of weeks. It's now detecting the user packages, and then we were also missing some Red Hat Enterprise Linux paths. So both of those are kind of in review. We'll have to kind of force some core members to review these PRs, but hopefully they'll go into the next version of OS Query.
Great, thank you, Constantine. And this was one that was reported at that we found out about during a get together in California, right, Jason, at the pizza place? Or was it Harry that found that? Either way.
I think we actually found this multiple different ways. I found the Red Hat one, and then I think Harry, when chatting with a prospect, found the other Python packages related thing.
Oh, okay, Jason's on with Epic Games. But yeah, so this was reported by a prospect, potential blocker. We wanted to jump on it, so appreciate that, Constantine, and great that we can get that kind of movement in OS Query. Next, Lucas has an update on OS Query.
Okay. Yeah, just share real quick, shouldn't take long. We're getting more active on the OS Query side in Fleet. Basically, right now in production, yesterday we deployed OS Query 5.15 to every customer in the planet. So they are running 5.15, and I'm just gonna show a little bit the changes there. There are small changes, but overall good changes. So these are not contributed by Fleet. I believe most of them, like a few of them, are by Zach, and then one by me, and then there are a few others by other members in the community. So we have improved Chrome extension to support the Arc browser, which I believe it's popular browser. So now it will include extensions there on that table. Zach has improved the socket events table. It has an option to filter by connections that were accepted by the device. So he added that support. This is some kind of cleanup here. These are all documentation ones. I think these are related to optimizations on the columns. Let me see what else we added. Oh, the ES process tables, that's a cool one. So this is also added by Zach. We added these columns to the ES process events, basically to detect the parent process, which is very useful for forensics. Sometimes, I don't know, maybe the parent process is the something you want to check, not just the process that is actually performing the action. Let me see what else. Okay, we added this one. I demoed this one on the previous demo call, but now it's shipped and our customers can use this optimization on the signature table on macOS. We added VS Code insiders to VS Code extensions. And I think that's about it on like the user-facing changes on OS Query.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Lucas. And lastly, we have Scott with a OS Query update.
Yeah, I got a couple on the hopper right now, but the one that's in review right now is to update the Wi-Fi status table. As macOS progresses, they tend to lock down some of the information that was previously available in public APIs. So starting with Sonoma, people querying the Wi-Fi status table were no longer able to get the Wi-Fi network that their Wi-Fi card was connected to. So we have a workaround for that. It's in review right now. That I've gotten tested on an actual Sonoma laptop, so it's working. Just needs to get reviewed, and then we've got another one that we're working on for Lenovo specific issues, where kind of like what we just saw with the package, file where vendors don't follow the rules and put whatever in there. Lenovo just in their BIOS table just seems to put things wherever. So we have to carve out some exceptions so that we can actually get the models and that's kind of ready to go. I keep having to bug Lucas because he's the one who actually has a Lenovo ThinkPad that we can test these things on. So I'll send the latest over to him, and then we can get that reviewed as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. And I mean, it really shows our intention to contribute and help move the OS Query project forward. We will have 4 separate contributors for their Fleeties in the last 3 months to Fleet. I'm sorry, to OS Query, and we'll continue to do that. And so that's great. And folks that can and are willing to work in C and C++ and get in there and get it done. So we appreciate that. All right, that is it. Any final questions before we wrap up? All right. Well, thank you, everyone. New sprint kicks off on Monday. That'll be Sprint Krypton, so prepare all your best Superman jokes. Maybe I'll dress up as Lex Luthor. I feel like I can pull it off. All right, cool. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend, and talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Luke. Have a good one.